This talk is designed to help you focus on the things that matter, to help you get more profitable, which will help you invest to spend more on marketing, hire that team member, and grow. This is kind of like the first principles, key things that you need to think about that I see agency owners are struggling with across different revenue streams. I've got people doing 10 mil, I've got people doing 1 mil. A lot of this stuff carries through the whole journey, different problems at different times, but I've tried to distill it back into a really simple system and a simple framework to help you where you're at, fix the problems that are broken, and hopefully help you scale and grow quicker with better margins. Especially at that smaller end of the growth stage, which I know a couple of you are at, often it's a business model issue. If you're working super hard, but the profits aren't there, we need to fix your unit economics and your business model first before you can then go on and fix the other problems. And the most common one, they lose profit in Slack, which means you lose profit in operations, you lose profit in overservicing and in that back of house problem. So if you're looking at your P&L at the moment and you're not hitting 20% regularly, including a founder wage on that P&L for you, then the model, you need to look at your business model, how you're pricing, how you're delivering, and fix that first before you start to think about big grand growth plans, because you're going to come into trouble. If you don't fix it now, the problem will get bigger and you will have to address it at some stage. And often it's not a hustle problem, because that's at the smaller stages of growth. That's how founders paper over the cracks, is they put in more hours, but that also can lead to burnout and makes you the key person risk because you're doing too much and we don't have enough margin to build a team to help you to do those things. So here's the two-step system we're going to run through. The first step is the Trimline Profit Flywheel. And the whole idea of this is to lift profit without having to add more hours. And then the second one is turning that profit into cash and actually crystallizing it to then invest in other things in your business, which is, the whole point of running a business is to make a profit and either pay yourself more as a founder or reinvest in the business. But to give you those options, you first need to have a
Recording
system
in progress.
to stay on track. So here are the steps of the Trimline Profit Flywheel. You got to price your services properly. You need to protect the scope of what you set with people. And then really importantly, you need to track your capacity, ideally time tracking, and see where the team's time is going. And then number 4, really important, is the feedback loop from what's happening in your delivery world. Feed that back into your future pricing and your future conversations and updating your quotes. Often that's the critical one that's missing, especially for agencies in the early stages. They don't have a feedback loop of learning those lessons and getting better and not getting burnt. And they keep making the same mistakes. Or they're not even tracking capacity and they don't even know where the mistakes are. All they've got is just disgruntled team members and they're not quite sure why. So the whole idea is to turn this into a bit of a science and not an art, and measure and improve. That's kind of the idea. This is the flywheel visually. Step 1 is price it properly. And often people underquote when they're first starting their business or they're just getting a foothold in the market. You have to kind of be cheaper to be the more, attractive option. But the longer you're in the game, the bigger your kind of clients you want to attract, because they're more stable and established and they stay with you for longer. The more you need to adjust that to reflect your value in the market. Second step is to protecting the scope, which is a kind of cultural operational challenge, as well as, I guess, just like a technical challenge of how you do it. So that's about making sure that the team are aware and have a commercial mindset in your business, that you kind of coach them to think like a business owner and to understand how each client contributes to making money and profit and how their wage helps contribute to that client, and staying on track and why that all is important. It's a really critical step. Number 3 is tracking your capacity. So time tracking, having some sort of resource management plan and having some ability to know where the team's time is going is really, really critical. Even if it's not used for clients or for team members' performance management, this is about just understanding if we're spending it in the wrong areas. I kind of look at hiring team members or a service business as you are buying 38 hours of your team members' time a week. How are you investing that wisely for its best return on investment and spending those hours as good as possible? Because if they're being burnt out with a demanding client and having to work 45 hours a week regularly, they're going to end up leaving you. So that's not a good investment of time. So overservicing is definitely not something you want to be doing regularly. And then likewise, if they're underutilized and they're not working on the right things, those are the things we need to know so we can fix it. So it's about making sure the team are protected. They've got the like Goldilocks, just the right amount of hours without going over or under. And that means that everyone's happy, that the business is in balance, the team are happy, not burnt out, all those things. That can only happen from tracking it. And then the last one is the feedback loop, which turns this into a profit flywheel. You review and adjust. You look at the capacity, you look at the clients who are pain in the ass, always demanding, and work out, are they open to a price increase or do we need to get rid of them next time we land a better client? So making sure you review that time tracking data and adjust future prices and quotes and take those lessons. So it's an iterative process in terms of protecting your profit and making sure you maintain these things. So step one, already mentioned it, but here's some models that work. Setting retainers, they have to come with boundaries. So there can be no unlimited, there can be no always yes. You need to be clear that your team know what's in scope and that coach your team in being able to say no, or at least have a deflection where they can bring in the account manager or a leader to have that awkward conversation over the top of them. Projects, point B here, is always a really, really common one that people are overservicing or out of scope on. It's like the laws of gravity with projects, is that they want to be wildly over budget. And everyone has to fight tooth and nail to keep projects on budget. Across all revenue levels I see, it's the same challenge. They're bigger, chunkier, it takes more time. It's very easy to get off track. And if you're not looking at the time, it can get off track in a really bad way and you can be a long way off path. And often on the fixed fee contracts, the agency ends up eating all that profit margin and they don't make any profit because it's on you basically. And another one in terms of pricing is make sure you're doing a paid discovery ideally. And so you're a bit of a sense check to see if they value your services and getting some cash flow, some cash up front. A little bit of a litmus test for if you think they will be a good fit for you. Some quick tactical things on pricing, test a 10 to 20% price increase on new proposals, test the market, see if you're actually at your ceiling. Maybe you're underpricing, you don't even know it, but you need to test to work that out. Another one with pricing is don't price everyone the same and make sure that your seniors are charged accordingly and you're budgeting for that in your quotes, because that's another key profitability killer is expensive seniors doing junior level work that a VA or just, an intern might be able to do. So you make sure like I said, you're buying 38 hours of expensive time, make sure you invest those 38 hours of expensive time in the right places to get a good return on them. And last one, kind of sounds simple, but don't make your contracts or scope super overwordy. So make sure everyone truly understands where the boundaries are. It becomes too legalese. No one understands it. It sounds like it's written in Latin. Make sure it's kind of passes the pub test that everyone understands and is clear where they stand. And so you can have those awkward conversations later on and people are aware that where they stood and there's no ambiguity there. Pricing is your fastest profit lever. If you do nothing else except increase your prices on new clients next month, that's going to go directly to your bottom line. It's just immediately going to start improving your net profit. So obviously we want to sell to more clients, maybe bigger clients, but that is the biggest sugar hit you can give a business if you are struggling right now. Very importantly though, we obviously want to find our ceiling with that, but you also want to make sure that you're establishing your floor of where you're not willing to go, especially if they've got a few agencies pitching and they're trying to squeeze you for a few dollars. You need to know when it's going to start costing you money and that you shouldn't go below that. And if you're pricing by classic, hourly charge out rate times hours, make sure that charge out rate is at a decent level, that you're not eating into your profit margins too much. So my rough rule of thumb, I think we did a webinar on this previously, was making sure that you're charging out whatever the hourly cost of that team member is. You want to times it by 3.5 to 4 to get their charge out rate, to make sure that you are building in enough profit margin that they can contribute to overhead, that they can also, contribute to profit as well. So make sure you don't discount anyone, especially the seniors. And that happens often when you have blended rates. So the blended rates is good at the start because it's simple. It makes your math and pricing and quoting easy. But the longer that you're in the game, I've got clients been agencies for 10 plus years, the more that the team members get promoted and they get a bump in wages, but then the blended rate doesn't adjust for that. So you've got everyone slowly creeping up in terms of wage, but the blended rate isn't really reflecting that. So they become more senior, and that's just eroding your margins in a really hidden way within the business. So that's why having those tiers, depending on their seniority, which is based on their wage, connects those things to make sure that the expensive people aren't bleeding you of cash. Which is why middle management gets cut during a recession, because they are the most expensive and often least profitable. Point 3, linked pricing to scope control. So I had a conversation with an agency owner a few weeks ago, how they were bragging about their charge out rate was like $300 plus, where we're an exclusive, expensive agency. You know, we're highly skilled technicians, but they're also relentlessly overservicing every project. So the charge out rate means nothing. It's nice for the founder's ego to think that they're exclusive, but if you're throwing double the hours at it, your charge out rate is effectively halved. So your actual charge out rate is 150. So make sure that that is part of it, and that's going to be, you know, point 2 on this flywheel. And then last one in terms of pricing, if you're getting heaps of pushback and like that $2,000 client doesn't want to eat the 2,200 increase up, you know, $200 plus, maybe you're targeting the wrong clients. If they're that price sensitive, are you fishing in the right waters? Everyone's got to start small, you know, when you're first getting started, but as you become more established, you build your brand, you're known in the market, you naturally will gravitate to dealing with better, more established businesses who are probably bigger as well. So you kind of targeting smaller fish seems good because they're easy to kind of win and find. But the reason they're easy to find is because no one else wants to work with them, because they'll cancel at the sign of any slight dip in performance, and they're just not great long-term partners. So that's another one, is you can sell bigger retainers to bigger clients, which sounds obvious, but it's true. All right, a couple of quick strategic moves. I already mentioned it above, but charge for discovery, control the process, and Woz probably knows more about this than me. I'm definitely not the expert, but make sure you qualify harder, lead the conversation, be willing to walk away, be willing to say no if they are a bad fit. And I'm sure there's plenty of psychological evidence about how if you take that kind of confident, dominant position, you can then price with confidence too. So making sure that you're not just an order taker, you're dictating the terms because you're confident in what you're doing. Number 3 here, selling outcomes, not hours. So, you know, this, AKA value-based pricing, easy to say, everyone loves the idea, hard to do in practice. But if you can do it, you can obviously charge a lot more. An example of that might be, you know, another model to charge is, I've got clients on percentage of media spend. So you're taking a clip of whatever media the client is spending. If you can convince them to spend more because you're getting them great results, you're sharing in that outcome. You're sharing the upside with them. And then, as I said, point 4, price is a filter. Make sure you attract the right ones at the right price point. 3 quick wins, and then we'll move on to step 2. Gold, silver, bronze. Pretty common, but giving that client the illusion of options, even though you want them to choose silver every time. Have a management engagement policy. So, you know, a lot of my more established clients have a 12-month engagement. That also works out if they're going to be a good fit, if they're willing to commit to you. And then the last one, raise prices on new work. That's always where you do it. You don't just email blast your entire list with a price increase. That is a great way just to ruin your business and everyone churn. You start with the new clients, then you start targeting your pain in the ass clients next, you know, your bottom 3, then you work your way up one by one. So it's a tactical, selective way to do it. Scope creep and protecting the scope is important in both retainers and projects. For projects, they naturally just want to explode in hours. As I said, that's just the law of gravity with those things. It's like the Big Bang. They just want to evolve and become a massive pain. So you have to fight hard to keep them on scope and on budget. So that takes more discipline. The scope challenge I see with retainers is that it's a death by 1,000 cuts. It's not actually that you're way over 1 month, but the scope slowly changes with small little yeses and extras as the months roll on. So it's harder to actually see it, but the scope slowly shifts over time, and it's hard for you to catch it until you realize that we're spending way too long, but the client's gotten used to it and they're already paying that dollar for that amount of service. And that's a very awkward conversation to say, hey, we're not going to give you anything more, but we need to raise the price. And that's very hard to do once you're already down that garden path. So obviously, if there's no change request, you don't do the extra work, and you need to have systems and structures to catch it. The team need to know what's in scope, and then they need to have some scripts or some ability to have that harder conversation. It's so hard to get the person who you're telling to keep that client happy, also tell them in the other ear, but also say no to them. Like you're asking them to do two different things at once, and it can be very hard to do. So you need to have someone, in my opinion, someone else to be able to have that convo. Might be the account manager, might be a leader. And all you need the team to know is like, hey, yeah, I know that this commercials don't make sense. They want more hours. We don't have more hours. I'm going to handball them and deflect them across to someone else to have that. And so it's just like, hey, happy, let me take the details. I'll go chat to so-and-so. We'll see if we can, that's in scope. And then you have that combo. And just having those quick scripts like that helps them deflect rather than getting them to say no in the moment and pitch, which is very hard to do. It's a very different skill set than, the technician that you have in that seat that's just on the tools helping them. Create a 1% better list. So if the same scope problem is happening regularly, and the only reason you know that is because you're tracking it and having those conversations, there's not bad luck. It's a systematic problem. So you need to write it down and fix it forever. This is kind of applied to a bunch of different things in life. This is also just like a compound interest graph for earning money in a bank. But if you're making those little 1% improvements across the team, across the scope, across the projects, that will compound every month on month, as you keep serving that client, and also for the new clients that you're getting better at and better at. But on the flip side, if that scope creep happens, as I said, over time, a little bit more every month, that compounds on the negative all the way down as well. So it's about sweating the small stuff, caring about those little things without being like draconian and OCD, but knowing that like how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's easier to nip it in the bud regularly than have that big awkward conversation saying, hey, we need to double the price because we're doing double the hours. We didn't realize it, but sorry, I wasn't tracking it because I'm not a good operator. It's hard to say to your clients. So that's why it's really important. Some 1% improvement examples. So just like briefing checklists. So making sure the team are clear on it. SOPs, I'm sure you probably built them out, but making sure they're clear and read and actually followed. The definition of done to reduce the revisions. And that's about agreeing with the client what done looks like. One little tip one of my clients does, he looks at his project work as doors that they walk through together and lock. So like you could imagine that as a milestone payment, right? Like 4 milestone payments over the course of the project. Once you walk through milestone 1 and that door, you all agree that if you have to walk back through that door, that's going to cost more money. And so everyone's clear of like what's done in milestone 1. And if anything has to change, we can't just go back. That's going to cost more money to open that door, and trying to make people clear. It's gated, so they're aware that they're on the journey with you. Change request. Bigger agencies do this. Sometimes in smaller ones, it's like an admin headache, but have some way to document what the person wants if it's out of scope and have an ability to do it. So then you can start to say, that's a small one. We're going to say, hey, we'll do that for you because we love you, but this is the only one. And then the next one we'll have to charge you. So you can be more tactical with letting them know it's out of scope and we're doing it as a favor to build relationships rather than just saying yes to everything and they think it's just part of the engagement. So at least they know they're getting a little bonus. And then quality assurance. So making sure that, before you do your whips, everyone's ready to go, and that everyone's clear on presenting your work and that the client is aware of everything. Number 3 is track capacity. So we're at the 3rd step of our profitability flywheel. You can't fix what you can't see. So busy is not a metric. So you've priced well, and then you're protecting your scope on that work, which is great. You've got all those like tactical front defensive things about upsells or spotting it and that kind of stuff, but you still need to see where the hours are going and where the team is spending their time. Even though you've got those defensive measures up, you need to actually see the raw data too. So I'm a big fan of time tracking, and I think everyone should be doing it. Otherwise you have no idea where your team are investing those 38 hours a week. One metric I look at in this world in terms of tracking capacity is a really simple one, but you can apply it across different clients. You can compare it retainers to projects, is average billable rate, or ABR. And that's just the total revenue from that client and then divided by the total hours spent across the team, which gives you your rough amount of, hours, the dollars that you're earning per hour. And you can compare that to across your clients. And it gives you a really nice way to work out who has the lowest, average billable rate, which means you're spending the most hours. And that's the starting point for where you start your investigations. And you work out where you're donating your time. So 1 month of that, of tracking ABR, is kind of useful, I guess, but tracking it monthly over time helps you also see the trends of who's improving, who's decreasing, and it helps you give you a deeper level of analysis. So I also recommend tracking it over months as well. And for projects, tracking it weekly, so you know when you're going off track. So you have those stand-up whips, you have a look at your pacing, you see how we're tracking versus what the plan was for this milestone, how far along are we in it, and you can actually make adjustments on the fly rather than just getting to the end of the project. You've run out of hours and money, but you've still got 50% of it to deliver, and then you're in the hole massively. So it's about helping you course correct as you go. And time tracking isn't for the client, it's for your visibility as the founder. It's to stop working for free and to stop the team burning out. As I said, you need to know who the demanding clients are. Tracking ABR will tell you that with their low billable rate. And that's where you can say, hey, is it just the team member struggling? Do they need training? Or is it the client asking way too much? And I need to have a chat with the client. And you could then start diagnosing the problem. But if you don't track capacity, you don't see the problems. And you can't start diagnosing them. And this is the feedback loop, step 4 that I'm talking about. So you're quoting for clients, you're tracking it, you're comparing it, and then you adjust the next quote. So it's an endless loop of pricing and adjusting. Once you realize that, hey, that client is always over budget in hours, but actually I set an impossible task for my team. We couldn't ever do it in those hours. Especially early days, a lot of founders just like putting a finger to the wind, coming up with a price and hoping for it, or eating a discount just because you're desperate to get them and then just having to make it work. That feedback loop tells you when that was a very bad decision because you're constantly over-servicing them and not making any money, which means the team don't have any more hours of their 38 to invest in a better client who isn't demanding, who you will make money on. So there's a big opportunity cost of over-servicing as well. Those hours could be invested somewhere way better. And that's why people naturally, as they go up market, they cut the old legacy clients because it's hard to increase prices. They're so used to your old ones. So people slowly churn out their old clients as they move and they get the bigger, better ones. And it happens over time naturally. So quick little tip. If you are doing time tracking or thinking about it, like the number one thing I see with time tracking when I'm looking at it with clients is that they don't trust the time data. That they're like, yeah, the team, it's pretty shaky. They're kind of putting in what the founder wants to hear, or it's not complete, or they're having a hassle. So often that's a product of making it too complex. People love the idea of this tracking time, and then they hire a ClickUp consultant and they go way in depth and they have subcategories on subcategories. And they're like, I'm going to have all this data about which little niche of my SOP is going off track, but it's overwhelming for the team to track. And then in reality, the team just start dumping it all in admin. So keep it really simple for where the time can actually allocate, where the team can actually allocate their time, and try and tie those buckets to how you're quoting. So you can at least just see which part of your quote needs improving because you've roughly mapped them to them, So it gives you a little layer of detail, but it doesn't go, way too in depth, and the team gets overwhelmed, and they just start making it up. So it's a balance there. At the very highest level, hours per client is great. The next best is like hours on certain clients, and also how much time are they spending on admin or internal stuff. You also need to know like what else are you doing in the business, so you can work out the balance of billable, non-billable. And then from there, the next best is to have those two, but some more categories within the client that might give you better insights how to better quote next time. So that'll depend on how you structure your services and all that kind of stuff. But That helps you with the feedback loop. All right, so that was the feedback. That was the profitability flywheel. Now, step 2, you're all insanely profitable, and we need to convert that profit into cash, which will then give you options to grow, because you're all here to grow. You're all part of a community where you're trying to focus on growing your top line, and that's most people's goal in business. So we need to first get profitable and then execute on the options that additional margin gives you. And some of those are, increase your pay if you're underpaying yourself, growth and marketing spend. You might want to hire someone, or you might be like skint on cash and just need to build up your cash buffer so you can sleep in bed at night because you've gotten close to not making a BAS payment, and that pain of cash crunches and things come up that you haven't seen, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to learn my lesson and build cash. Increased margin helps you do all of those things. So some ways to do that in a better way, improve your cash flow, is to get paid earlier. Paid in full sounds like a great one from one of our members here today. So getting paid earlier, obviously retainers up front in advance is the gold standard. On a direct debit, that would be awesome. But the bigger you go, the more tier 1 corporates that you try and target for your business, the more that they force you onto having to put in a PO and be on their payment terms. So that works at the smaller end of the market, but it gets harder the bigger brands you work with. The second one is stop being a bank for your clients. So if you have a late payment policy, you have to enforce it. You need to make sure that you're communicating with them regularly. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so if you're not looking at your age, if you're not first doing bookkeeping regularly and then looking at your age receivables list and chasing people down in a nice way, it's on you that you run out of cash. So you're the one that should be managing that process, or obviously someone on your team, your bookkeeper or someone. The problem with not being a bank for your clients is you can try and fob that off to your finance department or your bookkeeper, but they don't have that client relationship and they don't have that authority over the other founder or the other person. So often in sometimes those situations, it does require, someone who has more of a relationship with the client to touch base and follow up on the payment. And then one little tip that some of my clients do is create an alias for someone with a very nice sounding name that sometimes doesn't exist, but they're the email that they chase people with, So you find, if Heidi at your agency chases them, it's not the founder just being like, hey, I need my money. You've got this kind of barrier to making it less awkward to chase. So you can set up an email alias. Sometimes that's more human rather than just like an accounts at your agency chasing them. So it's kind of like the human psychology of trying to get that money in a nice way. And then last one, sinking funds for annual bills. This is just about the discipline to set aside some cash and not spend it all, but know that you've got big stuff coming up. Often there might be like a cycle to when your big bills come up, when your insurance comes up, when your annual software stuff comes up. Knowing that stuff hits and having that little nest egg where you're chipping away to add to that for your big bills helps reduce that stress and cash crunches. And importantly, build some cash runway over time. So you've got that little nest egg. If something pops up and you didn't even think about it, just took you from nowhere, like a recruiting fee. Everyone loves hiring. No one loves paying recruiters 12 grand. So things like that pop up. That's where your cash runway is really useful, and you kind of can do it from there. Cool. I think that's it. And so the next step, I'll talk you through about where to allocate your profit and how you should think about that. And so what this additional profit through the profit flywheel will get you is your ability to pay yourself properly, bit by bit, up to a market-based wage. Often for founders in that early stage, they're underpaying themselves or not putting themselves through the P&L. They're just like taking out owner drawings now and again when there is spare cash. So you should have something on payroll, should be market-based, so we know what the true business model looks like. And additional margin helps you work your way up bit by bit. You can't go from like 70 grand to 250 grand on the payroll. You need to work your way up as the business improves. Importantly, you can invest in marketing without panic. And I know like a lot of what Woz is trying to teach you is to take it seriously, do it constantly, treat it like a really professional department. You need budget to do that, to invest in those things. And that only happens with profit. Then strengthen the team. with a hire, tools, and then the last one I've mentioned is a common one, is building a buffer. So you're not living in fight or flight and you're not making decisions from a state of constant panic. And here's a little chart I prepared for us of how your revenue gets split. So if you think about this pie chart as like 100% of your revenue, whatever, this is using something called common sizing, whatever your revenue is, right? If you're a 2 mil agency, if you're a 1 mil agency, it all kind of gets split into same similar categories. So your team for an agency is often the most expensive part of a business. So that might be taking up 50% of all your revenue. Every month, you got to pay payroll. That might walk out the door. You might have some contractors you rely on in cost of sales. So every month, 10% of your revenue walks out the door as well in those key areas. And this is a good rough benchmark to aim for, by the way. You don't want to be ideally too far above 50%, definitely not above 60% in terms of percentage of revenue. And then you've got the other categories like marketing. If you want to be investing in growth, 5% is kind of minimum you want to be spending on it, but you can up to 12% of revenue if you want to go in growth. Above 12%, you're in growth mode. But in order to allocate more to your marketing and growth, guess where it's going to come from. Can anyone guess the one that I've highlighted? It eats into your margins. That's where it comes from, because your facilities costs probably aren't going to change. Your rent doesn't. You can't just halve your rent all of a sudden. That's a fixed cost. Your finance team might be taking up 2 to 4% of it, but you're not going to fire your bookkeeper. You're not going to fire your tax accountant. That's pretty fixed. Software, again, you can trim them and you can try and find some efficiencies, but again, that might take up 2 to 3 to 4% of your revenue. And the best of the rest might be 4%. So really, it's only ever come down to eating into your margins if you want to invest in those areas. So my point here is that you can only slice the pie so many ways. And if you want to invest in certain areas, like pay yourself more, well, your direct labor will go up. And so that will come from your margins. Or if you want to hire someone, maybe you need to look at cutting other areas of your business. But how you allocate that profit becomes really important, because if you're just allocating your spare margin to entertainment, travel to conferences that aren't going to make you any more money, just like founder ego expenses, you're sacrificing that profit margin for no future return of dollars. So you need to think about it like investment. Like I talked about with investing your team's 38 hours, where are you investing your leftover margin to help you grow and to do it wisely? So you don't have to put it all in one bucket, but think about that allocation and get strategic with it. So you can still take some money out of the business as a founder, reward yourself for the stress and the late nights and all that stuff. So I'm not saying you can't do that, but just know which season of business you're in. If you're hyper aggressive on growth, then know that you're going to have to increase your marketing spend and you might have to tighten up other areas and be really super clear on that. Or know that you're in a growth spree, so you need to basically cut all entertainment and go super lean on other things. And okay, I'll turn off ads because I've got all the clients now, but I need to hire. Or maybe not turn off the ads, turn them down. You know what I mean? It's an allocation thing. That's all I wanted to tell you. So step 1 is the profit flywheel. Price it properly. Protect your scope. Like, know what you're quoting and protect it. Track the team's capacity so you know when you're going off track. And then feed back that time tracking data into your future quotes and prices. And you do that through having that simple system of where you know where the time is going. And then step 2, once you keep improving the profitability flywheel, is then converting that profit into cash quickly. And then that cash gives you options, and it's on you to choose those options wisely, depending on what season of business you're in. And that hopefully sets you on the path to growing your business, because that's how people grow. So don't get busy being busy, get busy being profitable. And that's it. We can turn it over to a Q&A. There might be some questions here that could be interesting for people to share, but open for you guys to shoot with anything I've spoken about scope creep, maybe dealing with clients, cash crunches. Those are just some ideas. But yeah, thanks for coming along, guys. I appreciate your time.